This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And you have arrived at the Creep Street Podcast.
Hello and welcome.
Yes. Of course, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod, or X, as they say.
Yeah.
We are also on TikTok. We're on Pinterest. And, of course, if our current schedule just isn't enough for you,
If you need more, you need a little bit more,
you just head on over to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast for all sorts of goodies. In fact, we have a special little shout out for a new Patreon member. Let's give it up for Jack the Ripper.
Whoa. Hello, Jack. Thank you so much for being here. Wow. Enjoy that bonus content.
Yes. Please enjoy that bonus content. There's lots of it, but there's lots of it.
Oh, yeah. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here, and thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, yes. Now, I am not going to beat around the bush because, frankly, this bush has been beaten so many times.
Oh.
Let's just dive right in to today's episode. It's freaky. Oh, man. This is one that I'm scared of.
Yeah, no, you really are. Yeah.
I actually am. I'm very scared of this episode. Maureen, please tell us what we're talking about.
Today, we will be talking about something that we've touched on a little bit in other episodes, but today we are going for what some people consider to be the number one.
Yes.
The top.
Yes.
Today, we will be talking about Robert the Doll.
And I'll tell you something. I know Annabelle, gets Annabelle's high profile right
Annabelle
now.
gets the glory, yeah.
Because, the movies and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about dolls in movies, scary dolls, I mean, of course, there's various exceptions to the rule, like, the Twilight Zone episode and stuff. Chucky was really, in terms of cinema, and like I said, there's always earlier examples, yes. Yeah. But Chucky was kind of the de facto doll, like scary doll.
Goated.
Annabelle came along, in a way Megan is, I guess.
Yeah, true.
I kind of consider Megan a different thing because she is more about AI than like a spiritual being or entity. But I think that this doll today, this one scares me more than Annabelle. By far.
I know, it really does.
By
and
far.
You are not alone. I think according to all the research I did, Robert is number one. There's a reason why maybe you're a little bit more scared of Robert than Annabelle, because he is scarier.
And you know what? Let's start off this episode
by
saying we do this in respect.
Yes.
We are not mocking in any way. We are doing this in respect, this episode. None of that. None of that stuff.
None of that. We're here.
We are here in respect.
Yes, absolutely. Now, of course, let's get into my sources. And gosh darn it, we have some great ones here this week. One, we've got a documentary. It's one of those shock docs. It's called The Curse of Robert the Doll. Then we have a couple of YouTube videos that were very helpful. One was, of course, we've mentioned her before. It's the channel Monstrum by Dr. Emily Zarka, and this video is called Creepy Dolls.
Love it, love it, love her.
Oh yeah, the best. Then another great video called Watch This Before You Buy a Haunted Doll, 10 Tips to Avoid by Alex Matsuo. Then we have some articles here. One is called Why the Brain is Programmed to See Faces in Everyday Objects by the University of New South Wales at neurosciencenews.com. Then we have Why the Uncanny Valley Phenomenon Creeps You Out by Mark Travers at Psychology Today. Then we have The Curse of Robert the Doll by Kate Sherrill at Burials and Beyond, and Robert the Doll at gravesandgravestones.com.
Very spooky, folks.
So if you have heard of Robert the Doll before, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. If you've never heard of Robert the Doll, of course, welcome. So happy to have you here. But all you really need to know beforehand is just that this guy has been known as one of the scariest for a long time, too. This isn't just, an up-and-comer to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Robert the Doll himself is perhaps literally exactly 120 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he was created in approximately 1904 by the Steiff Toy Company in Germany.
Okay.
And the Steiff Toy Company it's kind of a big deal. You know, they were known for having some really amazing, like, high quality toys. And I guess they invented the teddy bear.
Are they still in biz today?
I think so. I think they're still, out there.
Wow.
Doing the damn thing. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, but I think they're still, well regarded and everything. But yeah, they invented the teddy bear, so they gotta be good.
Yeah.
So the Steiff Toy Company, they made what would later be known as Robert. It was probably like a jester doll. And it was made though to be in a window display. This was a display piece,
Oh, so like display only.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic because that's kind of what he is now.
Right, yeah.
Kind of display only.
Exactly. So I don't really even know if that is the particular reason why they said that they couldn't really get a firm or official, paper trail to have a serial number or whatever the version of that back then would be. What they said in the documentary, the reason for that was because it was a, display piece that it never got that information. So that's why they couldn't know exactly what year it was made or whatever. But that also could just be, they just didn't have that information or didn't hold on to that information back then anywhere.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But either way, we know that we just know that it was around 1904. But then a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, he got Robert, we'll bridge that gap here in a second. He got Robert the Doll as a gift from his grandfather. His grandfather had gone over to Europe to visit family, and while he was there, I don't know if it, was he got it for a deal because it used to be a display piece or how he got it or who he bought it from, but he brought it back to give to his grandson. And, like we were saying before, this was a top-of-the-line doll. It was very lifelike. It was big. But when we got to say this too. When I'm saying lifelike, I mean it's like a cloth doll,
Yeah.
It's tall if it could stand on its own.
Yeah.
It's the size of a kid, I guess.
Oh, really?
A small kid. Yeah, the face though, it's not like a plastic or porcelain or anything like that.
Right. Exactly.
It's cloth.
It is cloth. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
So, this was a big deal, and Robert was just so excited to get this doll, get this gift. Oh my gosh, a great time. And right away, Robert loved this thing. Oh my gosh. He brought it with him everywhere. He played with it all the time. And he really, right from the get-go, basically, really was treating it like a living person, like an actual friend. Kind of like a little bit of a crossover between an imaginary friend and then, a doll.
As kids often do.
Yes. And Robert the Doll these days is known for the sailor outfit that he wears. But something that is interesting is that the Steiff Company did not make sailor outfits for those dolls. So what most people think is that the clothes that Robert the Doll is wearing was actually an outfit from Robert the person when he was a kid. It was his old clothes.
Right.
And that is just another kind of level that kind of intertwines the two of them there. And as far as I can tell, it seems pretty early on that Robert, the boy, the person, he decided that he wanted the doll to be named Robert and for himself, the person, to start going by Gene because his middle name was Eugene.
Oh, so he gave the name.
Yes, which is another thing that people are like, oh, that's a pretty big deal. You're giving the doll your name. That's kind of a major energetic situation.
Yeah, a transfer of energy.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's also a good thing now we know the distinction. When we say Gene, we're talking about
yes, now we can
the
separate
boy.
It. Yes.
And then Robert, we're talking about the doll.
Exactly.
Because it would be very difficult if the boy still went by Robert.
It would be a lot.
It would be a lot to go on. So, yes. So, from henceforth, Gene is the boy who received the doll.
Yes, exactly. So, his family, thought that this was strange. But, they tried to go along with it. They were like, okay, that's all right. We'll call you Gene from now on. Call him Gene, not Eugene. You understand.
Yes.
Gene, Eugene. We have fun. But anyway, they were like, okay, we'll do that. But that wasn't the only thing that started to raise some questions and concerns from his parents. Things started to go missing or turn up broken more often than they used to. And whenever it was brought up to Gene would always say, I didn't do it, Robert did it. Always saying that Robert was the one that was doing these things. His parents also then were a little concerned about that as well, that he just would not relent and would not acknowledge at all that any of this was actually Gene. He really was adamant that no, Robert was the one that did these things. But the first real quote-unquote paranormal or supernatural incident that the family they all kind of agreed that that's what was going on was, not long after Gene got Robert. Apparently, Gene woke up in the middle of the night to see Robert sitting at the end of his bed staring at him.
Oh, boy.
Kind of, sitting up on his own, and that wasn't the last place that Robert was.
But that's freaky.
Oh, yeah. But then, just a little bit after that, the rest of the house, they all woke up because they could hear the sound of furniture being thrown all around the room. And apparently, when Gene's parents got to his bedroom door and they opened the door, they found everything in the room just completely a wreck. Everything in chaos, just a huge mess. And Gene was curled up in bed and Robert remained seated at the foot of the bed.
But everything was a mess?
Yes.
Wow. And when was Gene asleep?
He wasn't asleep, but he was curled up scared.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you would think after this that maybe Gene would pull back, say I'm scared, this is weird.
Yeah.
But Gene just kept on powering through. Not even really powering through. Honestly, he was into it. Gene just became more and more obsessed with Robert.
Oh, interesting. Because part of you would wonder if it was the thing of he would pretend he was okay because he was scared of the doll.
Right.
But no, he became more into it.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And his parents started hearing conversations between Gene and Robert. But it wasn't just Gene speaking in two different voices. They were hearing two distinctly different voices.
Oh, okay.
there's just no way that one person could be speaking the way that they were speaking. And something that we'll kind of circle back to a little bit later on here, but there was a maid that was living in the house during this time, and the maid's child lived with them as well. And this part here, this part is definitely more of it's not as sure that this part happened, but it is possible that the child of this maid very tragically passed away while living in the house and while Robert was already in the house. So just keep that in mind, and we'll circle back to that in a little bit later. Now, as Gene got older, even though, of course, he really did love Robert, and his connection with Robert was way more intense than a normal connection between a kid and their toy.
Right.
But, as Gene grew up, he did it. He grew up. And he knew that he had to move on with his life, and he actually went off to seek an education in art and architecture, eventually leading him to Paris, where he met and married his wife, Annette Parker.
Sort of a goodbye Christopher Robin moment.
A little bit, in a scary way, but in a good way, I guess.
If Winnie the Pooh were well, I guess it is a horror movie now because they've been making these, because now Pooh is in the public domain. They've been doing these.
Yeah.
These like blood and honey movies, which I've heard are awful, but yeah.
Crazy. And it wasn't long after that Gene and his new wife, Annette Parker, moved to New York City. Now, Annette Parker, she was actually a very accomplished musician. Oh. She did really well. Like, she was doing very, very well in the music scene, especially in New York. She was a pianist. And even though they loved living in New York and she was doing very well, money was tight. It was at this point, it's the Great Depression, and Gene Otto actually inherited the house that he grew up in down in the Florida Keys.
Yes.
Actually, I don't even know if I ever said that. It's okay that I didn't say it until now, but Robert the Doll, that whole upbringing situation, that was in the Florida Keys.
Right, which is where he is today, right?
Which is where he is today.
Exactly. So this is all located, in the Florida Keys.
Yes. So Gene, he grew up in Florida. He did his damn thing, was in Paris, New York, and now he's going back to Florida with his wife to start their new chapter there.
Yeah.
And this house, it's a really beautiful home. It seemed like a great situation.
Yeah.
And once they got there, it wasn't long until Gene was reintroduced to Robert. Yes, Robert the Doll was still there after all of these years, and Gene, of course, found him very, very quickly, and they just picked things back up like they had never left.
Oh, wow.
Yes, they started, Gene was spending a lot of time with Robert, and it started to happen again. Certain things that had happened in his childhood, Anne started noticing, his wife.
And this is a grown man we're talking about.
This is a grown man.
Spending a lot of time with
Robert the Doll.
With the doll, yes.
Yeah, so of course his wife is finding it very strange, and she also just has a very weird feeling surrounding Robert, just his presence.
And just to preface, obviously, men can have, collectibles. I have, collectibles of...
Yeah, of course.
But, I don't spend hours talking to my Green Lantern action figure.
Right, and carrying it around everywhere, and it's a lot.
Exactly. So just wanted to say that, of course, having these collectibles and these things is totally fine as an adult, but we're talking he's interacting with it the way a child would, or the way a 5-year-old would, or something.
Exactly. Just like himself as a kid. And it wasn't just this alone that was creeping Anne out. She also started to hear footsteps all around the house, furniture moving, malicious giggling, and even to the point where, once again, hearing multiple voices, hearing Gene talk to somebody.
And what is more chilling than a malicious giggle?
I mean, I'm scared. That
a malicious giggle?
A malicious gig.
Ooh, goodness.
I mean, come on.
A malicious gig.
A malishka. And the people in town, they knew about Jean and Annette. They seemed, like a happy couple. They lived in this beautiful house. The family had been there for a long time. So people knew about the family, and it wasn't long, of course, until people started to see Robert looking out the window.
Uh-oh.
And school children often said that they could see Robert moving on his own. There was this one turret where Jean and Robert usually would kind of hang out. And in one window, there would be Jean painting. And then in another window, the kids could see Robert. And Robert would be moving completely on his own.
Neighborhood watch.
Yes. So, as you can probably assume, this was not a long-term good thing for the marriage.
Yes.
And, they fought and they fought and they fought until they eventually just kind of lived completely separate lives. And basically, Jean spent out his final years in that turret, just kind of like slowly losing his mind with Robert.
Wow.
Yes. So Jean passed away in the 70s, and it wasn't long after that Anne, his wife, passed away. But before then, she sold the home to her neighbor, but she wanted to make sure that the neighbor knew that Robert was included in the sale of the house.
Ah.
Yeah. And during this period when this other family was living there, the new owner's daughter found Robert and, started playing with Robert. But quickly it turned south, with the daughter being very afraid of Robert and saying that she could see him move or that he wanted to hurt her, that he was wandering around at night, and she was having horrible dreams, all sorts of stuff.
Right.
And, Robert stayed in that house for a long time before he was donated to a museum in the area in 1994.
Okay, all right.
So we'll talk a little bit about Robert's home now, what he's doing these days, what this museum is like. Here, we'll circle back to that. We'll get to that in a little bit. But now I just want to touch on a little bit of the paranormal reasonings or thoughts behind some of this activity, or what maybe people experience now.
Yeah.
Now, in the documentary I watched, there was a psychic or a medium of some kind who was walking around the house, which is now known as the artist house, which is the house that all of this really happened in. And she's walking around and she says that she walks into a room and she feels like she can smell cigarette smoke. And, she's saying that it's interesting because in the photos that they have of the study from way back when, there were ashtrays in there. So the woman is like, oh, well, that makes sense that I smell cigarette smoke. I do have to just say, because we gotta be honest here. We gotta be true with ourselves. I think everyone and everything just reeked of cigarettes before 1995.
That's actually a good point. There was just a lot. Yeah, people just smoked indoors. It was just a common thing.
Right.
I can remember when I was young, but I can remember when people smoked in the McDonald's.
Oh yeah, I remember, the smoking and non-smoking sections of restaurants, which was horse shit. Didn't do a damn thing. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important to call that out. I'm not saying that this woman is, a fraud or something, but it's just, gotta talk about it. But what she really thinks and what her feeling is here is that she believes that spirits attach themselves to Robert. It's not necessarily that Robert himself is a malevolent spirit or a malevolent energy, but rather that he is a portal of some kind.
Yeah. And
for whatever reason, these spirits are able to attach themselves to it And these are just the accumulation of all of these spirits. And of course, not all of them are bad, but there definitely is some negative.
Yeah.
There's some negativity going on in there.
Absolutely.
And it said that this spirits are especially drawn to Robert if they have some kind of unfinished business or if their story hasn't been told yet.
Right.
So some people think that just for whatever reason, just the intense energy and passion and love and tenacity that Jean put on Robert it kind of created this, that created the ability for, spirits to attach themselves to him or all that. But some people think that maybe there was some kind of spell work at play.
Really?
That maybe caused this.
Post Jean or while he was still with Jean?
With Jean.
So, who would have done it? Must have been done under because I don't see, unless somehow Jean, when he was a child, did it.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was. I'm interested to see, like, was it performed on the doll before it, like, while it was in factory, before it came to Jean?
Well, the theory is this, and this is we're circling back here to something we started the circle of before, but it goes back to the maid whose child passed away, possibly while working and living in the house when Jean was a child himself.
Oh.
So some people think that the maid maybe had an affair with the man of the house, Jean's father, and that the child who passed away was actually their child. Now, I don't know if there's really anything to back that up. I don't know, but that's a thought. And this maid, she was from the Bahamas. And so in this documentary I watched, and as well as some other articles, they mention that they think that she practiced voodoo or Santeria to, cast some kind of spell on the doll, maybe to either have the spirit of her child that passed away brought into that doll, or maybe to curse the doll out of anger so that, the Otto family has to deal with this curse. It's definitely possible, I guess, but it kind of it reminds me of stuff that we talk a lot about on the podcast where it's like, Santeria is, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Santeria really in its most current form, I guess, was created in Cuba, and voodoo is Haitian.
Right.
And so it kind of a little bit makes me think it's the same thing, or it's like, she's from the Bahamas and she must be like connected to these dark arts like Santeria and voodoo.
Right.
And even though I know, just the fact that this all happened in Florida means that maybe she did practice Santeria or voodoo. It learned it from there. And I know it also Santeria and voodoo, it's not just in Cuba / Haiti. It's all over the Caribbean and everything. So, of course, it's like, this is possible, but it kind of gives me Native American burial ground vibes.
Yeah, it's what, I don't know what, it's a cliche. It's a voodoo is actually an incredible religion with a pantheon of gods and goddesses, and it's an incredible religion. But, of course, in pop culture, it has been, for, many years, it's been sort of, not, I don't know, fetishized is the right word.
Well, kind of like demonized, honestly, to make it seem like it's so dark and evil, and that, white people couldn't be capable of creating this, like, dark magic. And, when it's like, it's a lot of it is,
Right. And so what we're saying is sure, that could be the case, but it could also just be that, like, people just said it was that because that was what people thought of those faiths and those practices and stuff. So we're not trying to play into that trope, but either way, something's up with this doll.
Something's a little cuckoo crazy. And I just thought it would be good to maybe talk a little bit about why just dolls in general can often be creepy or scary. And I think we talked about this a little bit in our Annabelle episode, and then maybe some other episode too. Now I can't remember what it would have been, but there is this phenomenon, or I don't even know what you would really call it exactly, this thing called, I think you'd pronounce it pareidolia, and it is the thing within our brain that makes humans recognize faces so quickly and so readily that, like, you know, we often see faces in things that do not have faces.
Yeah.
For example, like an outlet, you know, sometimes, or it's like, it looks kind of like, oh, it's two eyes and a mouth, when it doesn't really look like a face.
That's true.
You know, or there's lots of examples of this, or knots in a tree that look like, you know, eyes in a mouth, or stuff like this.
Makes me think of the movie Skinamarink, how your mind would just kind of see things in the darkness.
Right, exactly. And I have a quote here from Dr. Colin Palmer. He is a psychological researcher, and this is how he explains it. Our brain has evolved to facilitate social interaction, and this shapes the way that we see the world around us. There is an evolutionary advantage to being really good or really efficient at detecting faces. It's important to us socially. It's also important in detecting predators. So if you've evolved to be very good at detecting faces, this might lead to false positives, where you sometimes see faces that aren't really there. Another way of putting this is that it's better to have a system that's overly sensitive to detecting faces than one that is not sensitive enough. Now, with dolls, you may be saying, like, okay, well, it is a face.
Right.
So, enough.
Right, it's intended to be a face.
So it's supposed to be a face.
Yeah, you're right.
And I understand that. But I think I wanted to prep you with that because I think it goes into the uncanny valley, which is another thing that we have mentioned here on the cast, as well as other places, you know, on the Patreon and stuff. And I'm about to get into more detail about what that really means. But basically, the uncanny valley is when something looks almost right, almost human, but it's not quite. Something's a little off. Basically, it's Tom Hanks in The Polar Express. I think I even used that example last time I talked about this.
Yeah.
It's like, we see that you're supposed to be Tom Hanks, but you're not, and it's freaking me out.
Right. You showed me a cool Instagram reel or a TikTok of people who are really good at uncanny makeup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like an uncanny valley trend that was going on there for a while. Yeah,
it's real spooky. It's cool. It's really cool. And
yeah.
It takes a lot of talent to do it. It's really cool.
Oh, yeah. No, it's very, very interesting. So, yeah, basically what it is, it's like it's setting alarm bells off in your body that something, like, isn't quite right and that you need to be alert and get ready for a fight or flight situation. I have a bit more of a nuanced or official explanation here. This is a quote from Psychology Today, and here we go. The uncanny valley hypothesis states that artificial characters and objects that are almost but not fully human-like will trigger a deep sense of unease. To depict this phenomenon, the research included a graph. The horizontal axis measures the humanness of objects, such as dolls, cartoons, and robots, on a scale from 0 to 100%. The vertical axis gauges our affinity for the object, with the top indicating strong liking and the bottom, or below, indicating dislike or discomfort. As the humanness of an object increased to around 70%, our affinity rises steadily. However, at around 80%, affinity drops rapidly but spikes again, when approaching 90 to 100% humanness, forming a, quote, valley on the graph. Objects without human-like qualities don't draw our affinity very well, like industrial robots, purely mechanical with no likeness to us. When objects weakly resemble real humans, like toys, stuffed animals, or cartoon characters, we find ourselves increasingly drawn to them, feeling a sense of connection. However, as objects reach the almost but not quite human level, around 80 to 90%, an unsettling feeling creeps in. At first, these objects seem impressively realistic. However, as we scrutinize their features, subtle imperfections emerge. Their expression and detail, though remarkably human-like, bear an eerie quality, a hint of life, but not quite genuine. This triggers a conflict in our brain between the appearance of humanity and the awareness that this, an object, is in fact artificial. As these objects teeter on the edge of the uncanny valley, our affinity for them takes an unexpected turn. The discomfort sets in, manifesting as an unsettling feeling in the pit of our stomachs. It's a reaction born from the clash between the expectation and reality, a psychological response to an almost human entity falling short of complete authenticity. And I thought this was pretty interesting to point out too, because I think in the early 1900s, their tolerance or their barometer or whatever for the uncanny valley would be all the fucked up, because they have no fucking idea. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They couldn't imagine, CGI.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So I think Robert the doll probably looked more lifelike to them.
Right.
Like, even though to us it would not be considered in the uncanny valley section.
Right.
But to them, it might have almost been, because it was like the size of a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they, they hadn't seen fucking Avatar. That movie is 20 years old almost. I don't know why that was the one I thought of first, but you guys get it. It's fine. But I will say, too, that sometimes it's not just like the uncanny valley aspect per se. That is scary to be around something like that. But also, I will say, it's also scary to look at something and not really know what it is.
Yeah.
Especially if it does have like eyes in a mouth, and once again, not actually eyes in a mouth, but just like it looks like it has eyes in a mouth to you.
Right.
Like sometimes that's very frightening, because you still feel like you were being watched.
Right.
And also just seeing something that you don't know what it is so, I think that is so frightening and unsettling, more so than we give that feeling credit for.
Yeah.
Like sometimes if you look at like an AI image, that shit really freaks me out and scares me, because sometimes there will be, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes there'll be something in the image that I actually don't know what it's trying to be.
Exactly, right.
Like there's this one time where Dylan and I saw a video like this, or like a AI image like this, and it was something next to a chair, and it was like, it's not an ottoman, it's not a cat, it's not like a magazine holder, it's not like a stack of wood, but it like looked like all of those things at the same time.
Right.
And it's like, it was so creepy and like just really hard to look at, because it's like, what the fuck is that? I have no idea what that is.
Right.
And that can just, that's a doozy. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Also, I think dolls just remind us of kids in general.
Yes.
And kids, they are innocent and they are naive, but they are a sponge, and they can just take whatever you kind of throw at them, and they'll suck it up, and it'll become them. And also, we don't really know at all what they're thinking, and they're unpredictable.
Yeah.
And I think all of those things can scare people and kind of put that same image or those same feelings onto dolls.
Yeah.
Also, kids have huge feelings about things. It's like always up to a 10. Like they're screaming, crying, they're screaming, sad, like happy, they're,
Right, exactly.
So maybe that has something to do with why maybe dolls, specifically Robert the doll, but all dolls maybe can be a little bit scary, because they have that energy put in on them, that intense energy that makes them feel more human.
Right. And you can't give a doll SSRIs.
We're trying.
Yeah.
We just unfortunately we don't have the science.
Right.
Because they don't have a brain, blood, or stomach.
Right.
But we're working on it. So the house that Jean and Robert lived in, I think I already mentioned this before actually, it is actually now an inn in Key West.
Oh, people can stay there.
You can
Wow.
stay there. And I'm not quite sure if the inn is haunted. I don't really think so. I think it's really was just Robert, and when Robert was taken from that home, it's gone.
I see.
I believe. If you've been there, correct me if I'm wrong. In 1994, Robert was moved to his new home, the Fort East Martello Museum in the Florida Keys. And staff members have reported seeing Robert's facial expressions change, hearing demonic giggling. They've seen Robert's, hands up on the glass. And apparently the bottom of Robert's feet have become dirty.
Yeah.
Because he gets out and I guess he's walking around at night.
Right.
But this museum, though, it does seem like a wonderful museum with a lot of great artifacts. This one, of course, included. And they've done a great job of showing Robert to the world and keeping Robert, accessible for us. And he is on display there, and you can go see him, you can take a photo of him, but there are rules you must follow,
Yes.
okay?
Must follow.
1, you must greet and introduce yourself. You must ask permission to take a photo if you're going to take a photo. You must thank him, and you must say goodbye.
Yes.
So essentially, this is just lunch with your aunt.
Right.
But also, you must do these things. And if you don't do these things, then Robert, I don't know, you could be cursed. And apparently, enough people try to hot rod, try to be cool.
Yeah.
And act a damn fool in there, that the museum receives between 1 to 3 letters a day addressed to Robert,
Yep.
asking for his forgiveness and asking for the curse to be broken.
Yes.
The museum says that over the years, since 1994, they've received tens of thousands of apology letters to Robert.
Wow.
Ozzy Osbourne himself blames a lot on Robert the Doll. Apparently, on one of the damn shows he does with Jack Osbourne.
Oh, yes, because now they do the paranormal thing.
They're doing all sorts of those. I don't know exactly what happened. It said in the article I read that Ozzy literally threw Robert to the ground.
Really?
I don't know, but apparently, shortly thereafter, Ozzy, he had a fall and needed neck surgery. He had an infection in his hand. He, I think, fucked up his spine, maybe needed spinal fuckery. He was hospitalized for the flu and other ailments. And Ozzy, he is the one that says that this was Robert. He thinks that Robert the Doll was the one that got that all going for him. Was it the years of drug use?
Who knows?
I don't know, but it could be Robert. Now, you may have listened to all of this and thought to yourself, oh my gosh, haunted dolls are scary. I don't even want to mess with it. I'm not going to tempt fate. I'm not.
That's me.
That's me too.
Yeah.
But some of you out there might be like, it's time for me to get one. Like,
Right.
I want a haunted doll. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
Right.
But God bless, quite literally. I mean, do what you got to do. And I have some tips here.
Oh, boy.
If you are so inclined, tips. And the tips are as follows. 1, document as much as you can. Okay, that's about the doll's life before you, previous owners, blah, 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 as well as after you get the doll. So you can kind of know if anything changes or just have a record of the days and the times of what happens if any kind of spookiness arises. Also, acknowledge your intuition and your feelings.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking at a doll or something and you get a weird feeling about it and it makes you nervous and scared and you don't like it, listen to that.
Absolutely.
If you're looking at a doll or something and you get a good feeling and relief or whatever, that's cool too. Acknowledge that. And always, ask the sellers for more information because they're usually going to want to tell you.
Right.
Read the descriptions, especially if you're buying something online, so you know what you're getting yourself into. And if you are willing to deal with that. But also you got to accept the risk that the seller could be lying to you.
Yes.
The thing you're buying that's haunted or supposedly haunted isn't haunted at all. Or the thing that you're buying that you think it's haunted, it's actually way more haunted and scary than you think it is.
Right.
Now, also, or make sure you tell and ask for permission from everyone you live with to make sure that this is okay. Also, make sure that you set boundaries right away. Do a little intro with the haunted doll and everyone in your house and say, hey, we're happy to have you here. You cannot harm us or the pets or, whatever.
Right.
Cleanse and bless your space before you get your girl and after, or, your doll. And then eventually, if you feel up to it and your haunted doll says it's okay, get another one. Get her a friend, And if you are looking for a place to get a haunted doll, there is a very interesting website called unsettlingtoys.com, and they are a company called Unsettling Toys Removal and Rehoming. And there you can buy or sell any creepy or haunted dolls or toys, and the people there, they try to match them appropriately. That's what they say. So if that is, your thing, we wish you luck. But, even though we are not in the Florida Keys and, all of that stuff, we didn't take any photos. I think it's just fair for us to all say, Robert, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
For your time and for letting us talk about you today. We meant no offense.
Of course.
And thank you.
Yes.
And goodbye.
Goodbye. Wow. Now, Maureen, that was quite the episode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking care of all that, for doing all that wonderful research.
Of course.
Folks, of course, as we said, if you want more, just head on over to patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. Of course, or go to creepstreetpodcast.com for merch, all that sort of stuff.
Please, and, give us a like, a rate, a subscribe, leave a review, all of that stuff. We really appreciate it.
And one more time, thank you, Jack, and welcome to the Patreon. But I'll tell you what, Maureen. I got a list of names that are a bit uncanny.
All right.
Give it up for our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Viet Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bone Breaker Bex Gray, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Sir of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Veeren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Ghoulish Gerd Hankum, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Schur, the Witchy Wanda J.P. Weimer, the Freaky Ben Forsyth, the Barbaric Andrew Barry, the Mysterious Marcella, the Hellacious Cale Hoffman, and the Nefarious Kristen Nowicki. Oh, thank you one, thank you all.
Big time. Thank you so much for being here. We love all of you. Oh my God, our Patreon subscribers. You guys rock.
Yes.
You rock. But even if you don't subscribe, we love ya, and thanks for being you.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Bye.